Hi everyone, I hope I am audible and visible to you all. Could you just give me a quick yes if you can see and hear me? Hi Aditya, Paulo, Ujwal. Just give me a quick yes if you guys are able to see and hear me. Then I'll start off. Oh, awesome. So, welcome to today's session on Let's Talk Tokenization. And today I'm going to be talking about tokenization of whiskey casks or barrels on the blockchain. So that's the reason you see an equation on your screen right now which says whiskey plus blockchain is equal to liquid gold. Hi Udaya, Akshay, Kaiser, Sahil, how are you guys doing? Saurabh, I hope to have a lot of questions today. So let me just quickly start. So, what we're talking about here are Scotch whiskey or other whiskey barrels and casks, not really bottles, right? So, first, let me just briefly give you a very interesting statistic that it is said that casks of Scotch whiskey can give higher returns than the S&P 500 index or even more than gold. Now, why does that really happen? Let's go a little deeper. So, first step that I want to talk to you guys about is why are whiskey casks or barrels more profitable than the bottles? First, let's look at that issue. So, those of you who do collect bottles, now you do realize that scotch gets more valuable as it gets older, or whiskey becomes more valuable as it gets older. But it's very important for us to remember the age helps in the maturation process only when it is in the wooden barrel, not when it goes into a bottle. And that's something a lot of people don't know. So when we talk about wine, okay, things are different. Wine continues to get older in the bottle, whiskey does not. So let's take a couple of examples. So, for example, you take a 3-year-old whiskey and you bottle it and you keep that bottle safe for 10 years, it does not become 13 years old. It remains a 3-year-old whiskey. Another example, so if you take the age statement on a bottle, it says 10 years. That means that that particular whiskey was matured for 10 years in the cask. Now, once it is put into a bottle, the age will not change. So, even if you keep the bottle for 20 years, it's not going to become a 30-year-old whiskey. It will remain 10 years. And that's a very important distinction that I need you to understand. So, I know there are quite a few friends of mine who buy bottles and keep it for a long period of time. That's okay if you're doing it for wine. If you're doing it for whiskey, storing the bottle is not going to be of any use because the age doesn't go up. So it's not really considered a good investment. Do let me know if you have questions. Keep putting them on the side and I'll take them shortly. So now let's have a look at why fraction. So what am I talking about today is instead of buying an entire cask, right, which is not cheap to do, it could be really expensive. A lot of my friends do invest in it, and that's the reason I got the idea for starting Whisky Fractions. When I realized that a lot of them are spending huge amounts of money to buy these cars, but the point is everyone does not have that kind of capital, and if you want to diversify your money across multiple cars, you can't really do it. So what we're trying to do at Whisky Fractions here is that each cask is represented by a unique digital token on the blockchain. So if there are 100 casks, there will be 100 different tokens. And each token has multiple fractions in it, which allow multiple investors to actually hold on to it or to own a particular cask. So let's take a simple example. So let's say that the total number of tokens for a cask represents its full ownership. So if there are 1000 fractions, you could own 0.1% for every one fraction that you own, and that's pretty simple to understand. Now the exit strategy, so that's another very important point for us to understand, that once the cask or the barrel reaches the end of the lifespan that we have planned, so let's say at the beginning we decided it's going to be a 10-year cask, what do we do after 10 years? So there are multiple options. Option one could be that we sell it off, right, and then whatever money comes is distributed to the holders. Option two could be we bottle it, and then bottles are made available to the token holders. That's a decision which is taken by the token holders themselves. So your tokens also have an element of governance in it. Saurabh has an interesting question. Does Scotch whiskey have an expiry date? No, it doesn't. So in fact, as whiskey gets older, it becomes even more and more valuable. So no, it does not have an expiry date. It doesn't get spoiled. In fact, it gets better with age, right? So the exit strategy is decided by the holders. The benefit of fractions is you can reduce your risk by spreading your capital across multiple casks. Another very important point is if you were to buy this individually, right? So you would have to bother about the authenticity. Is it genuine? The provenance, what is the line of ownership? And of course, look at something like the insurance. Now, all that is taken care of by the company. You don't have to do it for each and every cask that you want to invest in. All these casks are stored in what is called as a bonded warehouse. So it's a tax-free storage location, licensed and monitored by the tax authority of the UK government. So whenever you buy casks, it's always going to be kept in those kinds of government warehouses. So you don't have to really bother too much about the storage either. So if you were to do this on your own, you can. A lot of my friends, in fact, that's where I got the idea from. A lot of my friends were investing their own money and buying their own cars. But then you are responsible for authenticity, provenance, storage, insurance. That's quite a pain. And you have to put the entire money upfront, which is quite a lot of money. So with fractions, we want to make it easily accessible, and we are going to have a minimum of $100. So that's it. You just need to buy $100 worth of fractions at a time. Definitely putting it on the blockchain means that all the transactions are transparent, immutable. All you need to do is run your own node and you can see in real time all the ownership patterns and everything. The cost of running your own node is barely $5 a month. If you use a cloud service like DigitalOcean, if you use your own laptop to run a node, well, it's next to zero. Ujjwal has a question. All these casks are NFTs, right? And how will they be linked to the? Okay. So honestly, I don't like using the word fungible versus non-fungible, but let me explain it to you. Each cask is a separate asset represented by one type of token. So for example, our first cask is called cask number one. So it may have 1000 tokens, all called cask 1 tokens. Next one would be cask 2, cask 3, like that. So each type of token represents ownership of one cask only. And it is directly linked to the cask. So all the relevant documents are made available to you as the owner or as an investor in that. And everything is there, the insurance, the invoice which came with it, all of that information is provided to you. So you can kind of consider it in this way. Let's take an example of Tether. That's a company which provides stable coins. So Tether would have something called Tether USD, which is only US dollar stable coins. Then they could have yen, they could have Singapore dollars, they could have euro. Similarly, now imagine instead of yen, you have a cask. Instead of euro, you have another cask. So each token set relates to one cask only. So it is not like your ownership is spread across 10 casks. No, each token set represents only one cask. Ujjwal, I hope that answered your question. Uh, Trishant has a question. Will the tokens be traded on secondary market? So that's a good question. I'm going to come to that. So we basically set up a marketplace. So there's a brand new company which has been set up only for doing this, which is called Hi-Fi Fractions Corporation. That's a Wyoming, US based company which is operating the marketplace. Now this is where buyers and sellers can interact. So once you buy it, you can then list your fraction for sale. Any buyer who logs in can see all the different fractions that are available and then they can directly buy it. So you can buy and sell everything from the same marketplace. Let me see if there are any more questions. Could you please send me the present? Yeah, sure. So let me do one thing. The presentation, which is open right now on my screen, I'm sharing the URL. So while I'm speaking, if you guys want to download it, it's a PDF. I've just put the link so you can do that. Let me continue. Now, what about the profitability? So we anticipate that holders of these tokens could benefit from the fractions in multiple ways. So firstly, the value of the fractions increases over time as the whiskey in the cask matures and becomes more valuable. Secondly, when we bottle or at the end when we sell it, the profits are distributed amongst the holders. Now, the how it works is fairly simple. So step one, you can apply to join our private community. So if you're connected with any of us, me, Shinam, Keshav, any of us on social media, you can directly ping us, or I'm going to put the email address here. You can send us an email. I have sent that to you. Then once you've applied, we do a basic or an advanced level KYC and anti-money laundering check. Then we will give you access to the platform where you can very easily buy, sell, and trade into all of this. Now, another very interesting thing is that you can pay in multiple ways. So one is of course US dollars, pounds, yen, but you can also use crypto. So Bitcoin, Ether, Litecoin, and Tether USDT. These are the four options that we are beginning with. Then depending upon how the community grows, more could come in. So you know we want to reach out to the Bitcoin community or the crypto community who's kind of looking for newer and newer use cases for actually using their cryptocurrencies. So now we provide you with an interesting use case where you could convert your crypto like Bitcoin into Whisky Casks ownership. I hope that part is clear. If there are any questions, just put them in. I can see Trishant has a question. Wouldn't you need a security token license? No. So that's a good question. So whiskey is not considered a security, right? So let me give you a very simple example. I'm not giving you a legal explanation, but a very simple explanation. We call something as a security when it is either listed in the securities laws as such, or it is an asset which generates cash flow without you having to make an effort, and the people running that company, for example, make the effort and you invest in the shares and you get a profit without actually working for the company. So we call it a security. Whiskey, on the other hand, is considered a degrading asset. So there is an interesting concept in whiskey which is called as the angel's share. I don't know, have you guys ever heard about angel's share? Give me a quick yes if you've heard about what it is. If not, I'm going to explain it to you. So what angel's share is that when you lock it up in a cask, right, wooden, a certain amount evaporates every year because of the wood and the other things. So the amount of whiskey actually reduces, and that's another reason why the value of older cask goes up so much, because some amount of it is lost to evaporation, which is called as the angel's share. So because of that, whiskey is considered a degrading asset because its volume reduces over time, and that's the reason it does not also come under security. So Trishant, I hope that answered your question. Now, what do you consider when you're buying whiskey, right? So generally the points that you need to look at, one is the reputation and brand. So there are 1,000+ distilleries, right? So you need to make sure that the distillery you're buying from has a good reputation and history so that in the longer run the prices go up. Second, you look at the age and maturation. So how old it is, how long it has been matured, that kind of determines the value. Then you also look at distillery editions or limited releases. So sometimes what happens is they make special releases. That's usually very good because their value in the long run really goes up. Then you look at something like metrics. So in this particular document that I'm displaying, I've explained all these concepts. So things like what is OLA, which is original liters of alcohol, or RLA, which is regauge liters, alcohol by volume, and bulk liters. So these are some of the metrics that you need to understand. Like for example, if we were talking about the crypto industry, we would learn metrics like market cap and volume and TVL. Similarly, the whiskey industry has its own metrics. That's another thing that please make sure you all understand. Then we also look at the style and the flavor profile, the type of cask that is used, whether it's a bourbon cask, a sherry cask, a wine cask, that also affects the taste. So automatically the value is dependent on that. So it's believed that 85% of the flavor of a single malt would come from the cask. So it's very important for you to understand how that works. Then of course you should understand the trends in the market, and finally your own budgets and how much money you're ready to really put up. Now these kind of casks come in various sizes. So starting from about these 45-liter casks going all the way to about 650-liter casks. So they all have their own names, and that's how it works. Now, there are a lot of terms that you should know. Now, that's something I'm not going to really talk about too much today, but this document is available. Download it, and all the important terminology that you need to understand. Some of the metrics that I was talking about, All of this you would find in this document. So let me stop sharing my screen and let me take some of your questions. Uh, this is an interesting question. Would governance of each barrel or cask floated operate as a DAO? In a way, yes. Although we are not creating a separate DAO or a company around each cask, because then from a management perspective, that becomes extremely difficult to manage. But the token holders for a particular cask do the governance. So it is completely left to them. So in a way, you can call them a DAO, although, like I said, it's not legally registered as a DAO. That's kind of how it works. Trishant, I hope that answered your question. Another question that a lot of people have is, who is going to be the custodian, or what happens suppose the cask is physically damaged? So, like I explained to you some time ago, we have these custodians which keep the cask in a UK government bonded warehouse, and an insurance is provided. The insurance documents are also made available to you on the platform, so you can see that. Lots of documents are available for you to understand them. So that's kind of how the whole system operates. Are there any other questions you guys have? If not, then there are some terms that I could briefly kind of try to explain. Okay, let me just share my screen again. Give me a second. Okay. Now, one term that I need you all to understand is called age of the youngest spirit, right? So let's say you take a particular bottle. In that, there is a 3-year-old whiskey and a 25-year-old whiskey which is added to it. The bottle will be considered only 3 years. So what I'm trying to explain here is, whenever we look at whiskey, I want you all to remember this. Always the youngest whiskey will determine the age of the entire cask or the bottle. Because otherwise, what would happen is, somebody could take 90% of the 3-year-old whiskey and add 1% of 25-year-old whiskey and say this is a 25-year-old bottle. That's not how it works. We always look at AYS, or the age of the youngest spirit. Other terms, okay, I've already explained angel share to you guys. Some other terms that I wanted to explain, let me just get to them. Many of these you can download and easily read it. Yeah, one thing I wanted all of you to understand is whiskey comes in various types, right? So there's bourbon, which is an American whiskey, or there's Canadian whiskey, there's corn, there's Indian. But what we are starting with is Scotch whiskey, right? Now, there is a law called the Scotch Whisky Regulations 2009. It is a UK law which says that for something to be considered Scotch whisky, it has to be matured in oak cask stored in Scotland for 3 years. So that is something I want all of you to understand, that you can't just randomly use names, right? This is American, this is Irish, this is Scotch. No, there are laws in place which actually determine what this whiskey can be called. So, for example, there is something called Taiwanese whiskey, there is something called Irish whiskey, there is something called American whiskey, and all sorts of different ones are there. So, that's another thing that I need all of you to be very careful about. Trishant has an interesting question. What is the management fee that you charge? So yeah, that's a very good point. So this fee is 5% of the purchase price. So when we initially bring a new cask for tokenization, at that stage we take a 5% fee. And after that, there is a transaction fee. Every time that you buy and sell tokens, there is a transaction fee of $1. So it doesn't matter whether you're doing $100 transaction or you're doing $1,000 transaction. You just pay a $1 transaction fee. So it's not like, Ethereum gas fee, which could be $5 or it could go up to $100 or anything. No, it's fixed at $1 per transaction. So irrespective of how big or small the transaction is, you pay $1. And initially there's a fixed 5% tokenization fee so that we can take care of all these kinds of expenses. Trishant, I'm happy that you're asking a lot of good questions. So I hope that answered your question. If there's anybody else and you have questions, please feel free to ask. So if you guys want to be a part of this project, like I said, just get in touch with any of us. You can email us or connect with us on any of the social media platforms. We'll then do a KYC AML process, and then we'll be able to rope you in. I wanted you to remember that we are accepting multiple forms of foreign exchange as well as cryptocurrencies for payment. So obviously when a cask gets listed, you can see the prices in various kinds of fiat as well as cryptocurrency options are made available to you. You guys have any other questions? Can the community float a proposal to float a cask? Trishant, I don't really understand that question. Could you explain it? Are you trying to say that a few of you get together and buy the cask and you want to get it listed on the marketplace? Is that what you want to know? Just if you could explain that question a little more. Does anybody else in the meanwhile have a question? So I wanted to share that the idea for this concept really came, when a lot of my friends were discussing that nowadays they've started to invest in whiskey casks. So I had not heard about it before that, and I was quite impressed with this whole concept. And the problem that I realized in it was that actually doing this individually is not easy. You need to really go and make connects with the right distilleries, and then you need to go through so many of these different ones. And then you have to put a lot of money upfront to do this. So I wanted to kind of solve all these problems, and that's the reason we decided to come out with the fraction. So yes, Rishant, now that you've responded, yes, you can. So if the community decides that there's a particular cask that they want to buy in, absolutely that can be done. We can handle the entire tokenization process. So initially, it's only going to be whiskies, Scotch, Irish, and various others. And then as we progress, we want to move into other kinds of collectible liquor also. Somebody wants to know the URL. I'm putting the URL for this particular document that I was presenting. Just give me a second. It's a PDF which you can easily download. Yeah. If you just look at the URL in the chat, I've put in the URL. You should be able to download that. Any other questions? How do I invest on it as a retail investor? Yeah, Rajesh. So, like I said, get in touch with us. We'll do a KYC AML and then we'll add you to our community. And then one by one, as Cask gets listed, you can invest. And we've kept it in such a way that you need to put a minimum of $100. So it's actually very easily affordable. So it's $100 is the minimum that you. Trishant wants to DM me. Sure, please do that. So you guys can connect to me very easily on Instagram or LinkedIn or Twitter or YouTube. I'm on all those platforms. And of course, if you want to email me, it's rohas at hi5blockchain.com. And it's very easy for you guys to get in touch. Are there any other questions that you guys have? So I would request all of you to download this document, and especially towards the end, I've explained all the important terms. So all the metrics are very important. Secondly, we also have a LinkedIn page where we run quizzes. So every day you get to do a new quiz. So it's called Whisky Fractions. It's on LinkedIn. You can join up that group. So every day you learn about a new term. So that'll also help you guys. Carl wants to know, what are your KYC efforts? Okay, so that's a good question. So the KYC is fairly straightforward. We need to basically identify your name, email address, your telephone number, and a government ID, so we know who you are. It could be a passport, social security number, depends on which country you're actually from. And other than KYC, also AML is done pretty strictly because we do not want our platform to be misused for any kind of money laundering. So we do have a AML policy also in place. So once you guys get membership to the platform, you will be able to access all these KYC and AML processes, what exactly we follow, and in real time, you'll be able to see that if there are any changes which are made to that. Hope that answers your question, Carl. Are there any other questions you guys have? Okay, I don't see any more questions as of right now. I'll still wait for a minute or so. And I hope you guys are all part of the tokenization WhatsApp group that we have. If you are not, let me put the URL for that also. So every week, these sessions that we do on various aspects of tokenization, it's always put up in this particular WhatsApp group. I put the URL there. You can join that, and even if you miss a particular session, you can always watch the recording. So over the last few weeks, we've talked about various kinds of assets. We've talked about real estate. We've talked about carbon credits. Today we've spoken about whiskey casks. So like this, every week we take on a new topic. So if you guys have some particular tokenization asset that you want me to talk about, feel free to get in touch with me. If some of you are working on tokenization projects, again, feel free to get in touch with me. I'd love to invite some of you to, take part in this discussion. So If there are no other questions, we'll end the session for today. It was nice speaking to all of you. Bye bye.